But who's actually allowed to do that to you?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, how much power are you giving to people's words?
I bet you want to point fingers. Let's see your own life. Let's see your own life if it's good.
God.
Let's see. And then they go, all right, my bad, yo, my bad.
Welcome. Don't do that. Welcome back to the They're Dealing With podcast. Hey, what's up, my boy? It's your boy. It's your podcast host.
They're not on that podcast. It's a different one. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the In the Fire podcast. Today's episode 13, and welcome for tuning in, whether you're listening on Spotify, iTunes, or watching us on YouTube. Make sure you guys are subscribing, commenting, sharing, and liking our videos. We appreciate you guys, and we love you, and thank you.
Yo, where was the energy there?
No, it's it's like one of those peaceful like meditation podcasts.
Oh, the peaceful meditation podcast.
They're listening in the morning. What's up, guys? Welcome to the In the Fire podcast. You're not
an ASMR guy. You're average. You're the average Joe Schmo.
Okay, Joe Schmo, Nikkei Joe Schmo. All right, yo.
Danny.
Episode 13. It's a good one. We're back.
How you been, Danny?
Good.
Only because I have to ask.
I made that joke already. Don't do that.
No. I watched that episode again, and I was like, how did I not remember the disrespect that you showed me in the intro? I was like, yo, whose man are you?
I took an exam today. I did really well this time, I think.
Okay, so you studied for 7 now or studied 6 now?
No, I actually studied less. But I was just like, I don't know. It's funny? I actually thanked God in the middle of the exam because before I started, I was like, God, just help me out, okay? I don't want to fail this class again. And magically, I was writing down every single answer possible, and I knew what I was doing. So I was like, hey, maybe it was the Holy Spirit. Maybe, you know how it is. You know?
So you're saying that we can use God to get good grades in high school?
Chill. Everybody's going to start abusing God. Like, God, I can't.
That's good, though. You better get good grades, homie.
Yeah, you know how it is.
How
are you?
Eating chicken breast, chicken thighs.
On your diet?
White rice, protein.
Good.
I had an idea that, like, when I'm doing this intro, that in the future, like I forgot what I was gonna say, but I was gonna say something that's gonna like, okay, I'll say it now. To the what, 2 years, 3 years,
okay.
2 year me, you're gonna watch this back. You're gonna be the most shredded G whiz, the most handsome G. Right? Okay, look. Also, with that, I was gonna say, but your value stays the same. But for progress, like you're gonna look back and be like, hey.
What are you wearing, bro? What are you wearing?
Oh yeah,
man's came away with a little collar.
I forgot to tell you guys that we actually just came back from a meeting with Joe Biden. So we had to go meet him. I don't know why he wanted to meet with some podcast guys, but he watched one of the. He actually watched the one where he messed up, and he thought it was really funny. So Joe Biden DM'd Danny. He was like, all right, guys. Can I meet with you guys? All right, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
So that's came back.
I tried to get him on an episode, but his Secret Service didn't let me. So
yeah, they had like 30,000 guns or something.
Something like that.
We couldn't really allow him in the.
Yeah, we tried to get a mic close to him, but everybody thought it was something else.
And Danny got tackled.
All right, enough messing around, yo. This episode, we're talking about guilt.
Ooh,
it's a heavy episode.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a funny intro to be talking about a heavy episode like this, but it's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Last episode, we talked about
trust.
No.
Forgiveness.
No. Last episode was about pride.
Oh, yeah.
Dang, this guy. But yeah, this episode is about guilt. Let's get to it.
Let's get into it. So, look, with guilt, there's like 2 words that come into my head when we talk about guilt, right? So, of course, guilt, but the second word is shame, right? So, before we even get into it, we got to establish the definition of both these words. With what the meaning of guilt is compared to what the meaning of shame is, right?
Okay.
So when you talk about guilt is like you see, it's the
I think they go together, don't they? Are they different?
It's like it's more of a good or bad thing, you know. It's like I would say it's like to Christian mind it'd be conviction versus condemnation. That's what I would say. But yeah, guilt is a sense of remorse and a wanting to like make amends, right? So
really?
So I say that in a hopeful way. Like hopefully that when you feel guilt, you actually want to do something about it, right?
When I was looking up this episode, it actually said guilt was not a feeling. Guilt was like a condition. And they were talking about the legal status too. You know, like when the judge says you're guilty, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're sentenced to whatever, you're guilty. You were like you committed that crime and you were found guilty of that crime. And so they kind of, the way I found it was like they kind of described guilt as like a condition, and you can feel guilty, but guilt is not a feeling in itself. It's like a condition.
Yeah, I think that's a better way to put it too. Like, because like when you're guilty, you're just guilty.
Yeah.
You know, so I think there's like also a difference between like the judicial definition compared to
but when you do something wrong morally, and that's something I wrote down too, was when we cross a moral, ethical, or legal line, we feel guilty. When you like eat an extra cookie out of the cookie jar when your mom told you not to eat a cookie, you're gonna feel guilty. You didn't commit a crime, but you still are guilty of that crime.
Yeah.
And you feel guilt.
It's also a sense of remorse. It says a sense of remorse, like you feel remorseful. Like guilt is when you feel remorseful, like you feel saddened by what you did.
Okay.
Right. So it's like a sense of that, and also, but with the other part of the definition being like a wanting to make amends, which that's why I said hopefully when you feel guilt, you want to make amends for what you did. Right.
And something that was just put on my heart was like when you guys watch these episodes, like try to just first of all be open to what we're talking about. Be really like open your ears, open your eyes. Try to listen to what we're saying. And also just like connect it to your own life and things that you might not even realize that's going on. Look into your life, look into your heart, see what like things might be there that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're like, oh, I don't feel guilt. Why am I watching this episode? But maybe somebody else in your life feels guilt.
Yeah.
Or maybe one day you will feel the guilt, or you have felt the guilt. So like,
keep an open heart to it.
Yeah,
of course.
definitely.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so I was gonna say that when I say definition, I want to say my definition of it. Right.
Okay.
So Lewis' definition of guilt would be the feeling you get when you do something bad. that's Lewis' definition.
It's always the simplest.
The simplest thing, so everybody
wording,
can really understand what it means, right?
Okay.
So when we talk about shame, like because I got these from a website, right? The shame definition is the intense, painful feeling or experience of believing that you're like unworthy of belonging or like acceptance because you're flawed. And like I'm like hearing that, I'm like, damn, it's like mad intense compared to guilt, right? And because one, like I said before, causes you to want to do better, hopefully, right?
Okay.
Like guilt causes you to like say, okay, maybe I should ask for forgiveness. I should try to do something better. I should like do something to make amends.
Yeah.
While the other one, which is shame, is when you, also I forgot to say the Lewis definition of shame. My definition of shame is letting what made you feel guilty become your identity. And that's what I think shame like talks about, because
I'm gonna even simplify it even more, and that's the way I wrote it. Was good guilt, bad guilt, good guilt, bad guilt. Right? The good guilt is what you said, guilt.
Yeah.
And then the shame is the bad guilt. Right? Okay, keep going.
So,
I just wanted to simplify it more because I was like confused myself for a second, but
because shame, like it causes you, and it drives you to basically dig a pit for yourself, right? I know you heard this before, like the pit of shame, right? Like when you're in shame, you dig a pit for yourself, and when you're in that pit of shame, you're like hiding from people and from God, and you don't want to get help from anybody. You want to stay in that darkness, and like you don't want anything, because that pit is gonna keep on growing and growing and growing. Because you have that shame. That's why like shame is always made like as a pit of shame.
When I was looking into this bad guilt, picture like just a normal human being walking in the streets of New York. Oh, we live around New York, so that's why I said New York. But if you're listening somewhere else, but in the city, right? You're just walking. You got your little bag going on. You're going to work, and this bad guilt, aka shame, is this like dark cloud on your shoulder that's whispering in your ear that says like, no, you should feel guilty. You should feel shame.
Yeah.
You messed up big time. You messed up big time. Nobody's going to forgive you. This, and the other thing. Obviously, that dark cloud is always going to be there, and you're always going to be like, you're always going to be in that pit.
Yeah.
And that's how I envisioned it when I thought of this bad guilt, was like just that thing that's always constantly whispering in your ear these negative things to keep you there.
Yeah.
Because that's what it wants. It wants to keep you there.
Yeah. And the difference is like guilt is action based. And shame is character based. So when you deal with guilt, you say like, I did a wrong thing, and that's fine. Everybody does wrong things.
Oh yeah.
But shame says I'm a bad person. Right. So it's the difference of knowing like it's like is it action that you're feeling, or is it character that's like attacking you, right? Because again, it's always,
and that's the identity thing that you talked about.
Yeah. Because I wanted to say like when when you make that, when you let that shame, like it's like, you know, what my definition was that, you know, letting what made you feel guilty become your identity. Like you're digging yourself in that pit, and you keep on digging yourself in there. And what happens when you're in the darkness, right? You don't know where you are, and you can forget who you are.
Yeah.
Because you're in that shame. And like one thing that I wanted to say was, a lot of times shame makes us more lenient to do worse things. When you deal with shame, you know, you did that wrong thing, and instead of like trying to let that wrong thing make you do something better in the future, you're just letting it like stay inside you. And what you said, that cloud, that shame covers over you. It's like I put it like in my notes as a black cloud. So it's a black cloud over you, where you walk everywhere, but the shame's always like hitting you.
Yeah.
Like you're a bad person. You're not deserving of love.
Yeah.
So you keep on digging yourself in that hole, like I was saying, and you do that wrong thing, and you say, well, since I did that wrong thing, why not I do worse? You know, since I fell a little bit, why not I fall harder? You know, if I went this far with this guilt that I'm feeling, whatever you're feeling guilt for, like shame would allow you to be like, why not go all the way instead of only going a little bit?
I have a question. What about those people that don't feel guilt? What about those, like, you know, those like people on the news that just keep doing all these bad things, and you're just like, how could they say that? And that they just appear to feel no remorse, no guilt. What do you say about
I was
that?
thinking about that because I feel like we're also assuming that everybody has like a lot of high morals, you know? But the thing is, sometimes people just don't care.
Yeah.
And they can be disrespectful, they can be rude, they can do things that aren't morally like right.
Right.
And they just don't care. And you know, when you talk about guilt like that, I think it's like what you said in the beginning of the podcast. It's like being available to be taught. You know, because you might not know what the right decision for everything, and that's fine. No,
and that's something, like, I answered my own question while I was looking into it, was like, they don't understand that it's wrong. They kind of look at it as like just not a normal thing, but it's like, you know, it's whatever.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, no, it's wrong. You know, you should feel guilt. And he's like, but I don't, because they don't think it's wrong.
Yeah. And like you just have to be available to be taught. Like you have to be available for somebody to come up to you and say that's not good.
Yeah.
And like, even if because again, you can kind of be numb to that guilt by not caring.
That was my next question. I was gonna hit you with another question. Was, can you feel that much numbness to the point where you don't feel that guilt anymore? Like if you keep doing the same thing over and over again to the point where like you don't feel guilty anymore because it's become like a numbness in you.
I mean, I guess so. Like, I guess a person can go to that place, but it's not like they've gone so far, you know. Like again, like everybody has different morals and like different like moral highs and like lows. Somebody thinks this is more worse than somebody else, you know. So like, I guess it's because
I'll give you like a personal example. Is like, and I remember one of our friends told us that we always give like cute examples because like, you know, we don't be giving those like extreme examples. I killed somebody and I feel guilty, but mine's are like, all right, but so like when what if I get exposed by my college? No, I don't cheat in college. I cheat in other ones, but I become like, I guess, numb to cheating on tests. Like before, it was like, oh my god, I cheated on a test. I feel so bad. I feel guilty. What if I get caught? All this stuff, and now it's like, you know, it's like a normal for me. It's like, you know, I got to, you know, I got to survive out here. You know what it is. But to be honest, it's become like a numbness, and like, you know, it was just like, oh, like it's whatever, yo. It's like, it's not a big deal.
I guess that's like kind of testing you a bit. You know, you can always like say, if you weren't in school, you'd be like, man, I would never cheat on a test. Never. But then you go to a test like, I got to cheat. Yeah. You know, so it's like, it's really different. You get your morals tested when you go into different situations.
Right, you're right.
And probably in that, like, I'm kind of failing, homie. And you're failing the test.
I'm not failing the test.
You're failing the test and the test. Ooh. That's why it's important to always have your morals up high, right? But but to go back to shame. Like, I really like this topic because I feel like I really went through it, you know, because I want to just like say a quick story. Like, there was this one sin that I had.
Okay.
It was so hard to get over, right? And I've had so many moments where I was like, God, I'm sorry. I went back to it. God, I'm sorry. I went back to it. And the thing is, it wasn't like I did it and then said sorry instantly. You know, I did it and then 4 days, a week, maybe 3 weeks, maybe, and the time just kept on getting bigger.
Yeah.
But like, I realized, you know, what was stopping me was shame.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is, why was it shame? Because when I viewed myself, I only saw the faults in me. Like I didn't see like a person that could do this or do that. I always saw where I fell. And so when you look at yourself in that view, in that light of like your negativity and your faults and your mistakes, you're gonna believe that other people look at you the same exact way.
Wow.
And that's crazy because you live with that everywhere you go. Just how like that cloud of shame is hanging over you. You start believing everybody, like whoever it is, your parents, your friends, people at church, or you know wherever you go. You believe that those people only see where you fall.
Wow. And
so I had that view, and so now because of that shame I had, where I just felt like everybody saw where I fell, I thought that God felt the same way. You know, it took a long time because I was like, I feel like God's mad at me, you know, and like that God is like he only thinks about that one thing. Yeah. You know, like every time I go to him, I'd be like, he probably only thinking about the last time I fell or the last time I did this.
Yeah.
And that sucks. And of course, like I've learned now, thank the Lord, that God is always filled with grace and mercy, and God does not hate you, which is something I wanted everybody to hear, because you know, like I went through that, and I don't want people to go through that. So my friends always like, Angel, like a lot of people that that are around me know that I always say this when I'm always like given the opportunity to teach about it. I always say like, dude, God is not mad at you.
Yeah.
And that's a lie that I've had.
That was really big with you when you first started, but
that was a big lie that had to break. But something about that is, like, which I want to ask you, Danny, like, we know that God is always graceful and merciful to us, right?
Yeah.
But what about the people that have actually been shown shame, like by their like people around them, that they've been told like you're a terrible person for what you did, like what you've done? You know, like how does that person like be restored, right? Because we know a God that's like so amazing and beautiful and graceful and nice and forgiving, but people have been shown like completely like the complete opposite, right? When they've done something wrong, their character got attacked, their worth got attacked, their value got attacked. So how do you restore that? You know, like how do you get those people to get up from that? Because it's hard.
Wow, that is hard. Is this person a believer?
I think that's a big key about it, right?
It is. It is because if you are a believer, I think you are now placing everybody else's opinion over God's.
Wow.
Because if God says, you're forgiven, you are loved, I know your real character, I know your real heart, I know who you are, and you're putting everybody else's value of you over his, something's wrong.
Wow.
And the thing is, like, that's something I wrote down was, oh yeah, I know God forgives me, but you don't forgive yourself.
Wow.
That right there, my friend, is pride. Episode 12.
Last episode and the other episode, right?
And something I wrote down says, pride says, God may forgive me, but my standard is higher than God's.
Wow.
So you're like I said before, now you're putting your own standards, everybody else's standards over God's, even though he says all those great things about you, and you're still like, no, I'm this, I'm that. It's like, bruh.
Wow.
So your standards are higher than God's?
That's crazy.
Now, for a non-believer, it just gets so hard, and
because you're trying to like give that responsibility to people.
Yeah.
You know, you're trying to like say that everybody around you is going to show you that grace all the time. But thing is, nobody can show you that much mercy and grace. Yeah. Right. So you can't put that responsibility on people. It's like what I said a long time ago. Like, you know, you can never give a person, you know, like a person can never give you acceptance, purpose, or your value, because if identity, because if they do, they'll break you down. Right. And you'll be building that house on the sand, which is as Jesus says, right?
And that's what I would say to a non-believer if you're listening. Like, well, first, just know that God does forgive you, God does love you, and your identity is in Him. But just stop giving other people your identity. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't let other people have that hold of your character. Mm-hmm. You know who you are, and if you feel guilty, in my eyes, you're not a bad person, because it just shows that like you did wrong, you messed up, and everybody makes mistakes. Yeah, and I've had moments where like people around me will take one mistake from one person and just push it down on them and like make that their character.
Wow.
And it's like, have you met this person? Have you, like, you only recognize them by one mistake, but you don't recognize their overall and their real character.
Wow.
And so what I'm saying is, like, don't give other people hold of your identity.
No. And like,
just know that you made a mistake and that's okay. And you feel guilty. Good. Now you need to get up and you need to use this good guilt.
Yeah.
And not this bad guilt, aka shame, to keep you down.
Yeah.
Because look, life won't get better if you're just gonna let everybody else hold on to your character.
Wow.
And look, I'm not gonna say it's gonna be easy. I'm just gonna keep going off of this situation because I find it really interesting. But it's not gonna be easy. It's not, because you did mess up, and I've learned that too. It's like when you mess up, yeah, God forgives you. That doesn't mean life's gonna be easy, because you still messed up, and there's still gonna be repercussions for it.
Yeah.
But you gotta fight through them. If you want to get past it, you gotta fight through them.
Yeah.
You gotta give the people the time for them to realize who your true character is, because now in their eyes, you gave them hold of your character, and now you have to, I guess, not prove it to them, because you shouldn't have anything to prove to anybody else, but really just work on yourself and just know deep down inside you that you are working on yourself and you are trying to get better, and that is your character, not what other people put onto you.
That's so good. That's really good. Yeah.
Damn, I just went off. Like, I don't know. It was just an interesting example to me.
It was
a good question.
No, it's a really. I think people gotta rewatch that three times just to really get everything you said from there.
Yeah.
But to go back to shame, I wanted to say one thing that is very common, which is letting, what you did, like I said before, become your identity, right? Don't let shame become your identity. What you just talked about, like, if you think that you are your flaws and you are your faults, it's terrible. It's a terrible view of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like, a big thing that helped me get through that was when somebody said, like, you gotta look at yourself the way God looks at you. Because again, and you can't. It's hard to give that responsibility to people, because people still see my flaws, but God's like, I see the best part of you. So there's a big difference in that. But like, that's why I want everybody to understand that, like, you're not just that. You're not just your weaknesses, like, or your shortcomings or your faults or your mistakes. That's not just who you are, right? We're way way bigger than that. And when you're so caught up in shame, you forget who you are. Like you really do, because you set the bar so low for yourself. Like what I was saying before, like, you think that since you did that thing that made you feel guilt, and now it's turning into a character, this thing where now you think you're a terrible person, you don't deserve love. So now you're like, well, if I fell this low, might as well go more further, like more lower, right? I should do more stuff since I'm already at this point.
Wow.
When you have that mindset, you start acting in ways that don't follow your values or your belief, your character, right? Because you don't, again, it's like you're in that pit of shame, you're in darkness. You're acting in ways that they don't go with what you know. Yeah. Because a person can know what is right and what's wrong, but when they're in shame, they can just stop caring because they believe they're a bad person now. Yeah. Right. A person who God says, no, you're a good you're a person. You're a child of God. You know love. You know you're accepted already. But a person with shame says, I'm not accepted because of what I've done. So you have to remember who you are. Right. I remember my youth pastor. He would say this to his congregation, or he said it to me once because I was telling him how I was struggling with something, right? And he said, that's not who you are. And that was such a big statement to me, just because, like, this isn't who I am, right? Because we can fall to shame, we can fall to guilt, and we can fall to stuff. We're always gonna fall to stuff. Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
we're not perfect, so we're always gonna make mistakes, right? Yeah. But like, even though I make those mistakes and it lingers, that's not who I am. Like those mistakes do not define me. I might make them, but I'm still Lewis. I'm not a person who's addicted. I'm Lewis. Yeah. Right. I'm not a person who's insecure. I'm Lewis. Right. So like, I really want people to not label themselves with those guilts. Right. Right. And like, if you did something bad, well, everybody does something bad, right? Yeah. Take it as an opportunity to change for the better, right? We always want.
And that just moves on to good guilt. Yeah. It's a good transition into good guilt. Right? Good guilt drives us to repentance. This is what you talked about. It drives us to say, I'm sorry, I messed up, forgive me, right? And good guilt teaches us lessons. And the beginning of the few first episodes that we talked about were all about self-growth. Yeah. This is another one, guilt is a tool. Guilt teaches us, guilt shows us lessons. Guilt says, this was wrong, this was good. Now now go.
Yeah.
right? Okay, I stole a cookie from the cookie jar, an extra one.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know, because I'm fat now. So now I know maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, whatever it is, you just know like what is right, what is wrong, and you improve from that. You take it as a lesson.
Yeah, it's guilt should always prompt you to change the future. Like to change your future decision. That's what it should always prompt you to do, right? And so when it lingers, it turns into that character thing.
Yeah.
Like I kind of just want to ask you that too, Danny. Like why is shame so prevalent? Like why does people's guilt turn to shame like all the time? Like why is shame common for us? Like why does it turn into something character based and not just action based? A little hard question.
It is a hard question, but it's true. We like tend to do that a lot.
I feel like a lot of people have unidentified shame.
I think it's the case because of the society that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
I think even as Christians, even as followers, it's still hard for us to kind of ignore the other people around us.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it's the people we love and we care about that kind of make that identity. Because they're the ones that see it firsthand, right?
Yeah.
And so like it's really hard to ignore the words of a loved one when they say, you did that, and they kind of remind you of it, and they make that your identity. You go, if they did it and they love me, then like maybe it's the same for me.
Wow.
And it's tough. It is tough, especially with the society we live in, where everybody loves to point fingers and never point at themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a big one.
It's a big one because it's so common for people to just start hating themselves, which I know we talked a lot before. When you begin to hate yourself, and like that sucks.
Yeah.
Like God doesn't hate you.
Nope.
You shouldn't hate yourself, right? It's like it's terrible. It's terrible when a person has to deal with that. And I want to kind of just share a verse that kind of like correlates with my experience with that big cycle I had, which was a terrible cycle, and it was 1 John 4:18. Such love has no fear, because perfect love expels all fear. If we are afraid, it is for fear of punishment, and this shows that we have not fully experienced His perfect love. I thought that was crazy. Because I realized that in those cycles of me feeling that shame and going to God, me feeling that shame, I realized I was fearful that God was going to reject me. And like that's something that grows just through people. Maybe somebody in your life rejected you because you told them something. And now you never want to share anything that makes you feel guilty because you feel like the person might reject you. Yeah. And that sucks. And so I realized like, wait, like in that season of that cycle, I realized that I was actually being perfected. I had to go through that to learn that no matter what happens, that's not who I am, and God still views me the same way. Yeah. And so like it's taking away all the unnecessary shame that doesn't belong there. Right? A lot of like I know my friend is really big on shame, and he always talks about like I remember he said one thing that he said, "Where are your accusers?" Like there's like who is around you saying you're a terrible person? Like who is? I mean,
who's allowed to?
Yeah, who's allowed to?
Because people do it, but who's actually allowed to do that?
Exactly. To you? Yeah. Like how much power are we giving to people's words?
I bet you want to point fingers. Let's see your own life. Let's see your own life if it's good. God. Let's see, and then they go, "All right, my bad, yo, my bad."
Yeah, it's like, is there actually anybody pointing fingers at you? There might be, which is terrible. But if there's nobody pointing fingers at you, which in my case, like nobody was pointing fingers at me. Nobody was saying you're a terrible person because you're struggling with that. Yeah. Nobody was saying that to me. But that's how I felt.
You were doing it to yourself.
I was doing it to myself. Yeah. And so it wasn't until I realized, okay, wait, God isn't mad at me. Yeah. God isn't mad at you guys. I'm always going to say that till the day I die. God is not mad at you. And I had to learn that through that big span of season that God isn't mad at me.
All right, so a lot of people are wondering now. We talked about the good guilt. We talked about the bad guilt. Yeah. How do we overcome this guilt, right? And I'll start us off. I like to talk a more technical thing sometimes.
I know that much.
Speak or write out your guilt. Something that, a lot of times you feel the guilt, but you don't even know what you're guilty about. Write it out. Write out the whole situation. What went on? What did you do? What this? What that? Write it out or speak it out loud so that you can actually hear yourself. And a big one that I found really interesting was recognize when you are blaming yourself for something you have no control over. Wow. And an example I found was breaking up with somebody who still cares about you. Whoa. Yeah. And it's crazy because you do feel that guilt. You feel terrible. You're like, dang, like, did I make a mistake? Or you just feel bad. And what is that guilt that you're putting on yourself? Is it because you didn't fulfill their expectations? Or your own expectations?
Wow.
Is that why you're feeling guilty?
I feel like there's so many, like, there's a big spectrum on guilt.
Yeah.
And especially what you can be guilty about.
But their expectations don't have control over you. You don't have control over their expectations. You know, maybe you didn't fill their expectations, but you're fulfilling God's.
Wow.
So try to get rid of that. You know, I mean, that sounds like contradicting. Just try to get rid of the guilt. You know, if you feel guilty, just stop. But just recognize that you have no control over it, and it's their time to get over it because their expectations weren't fulfilled.
Them getting the sense of what the Spirit's kind of saying, where like you got to stop giving people so much authority. You know, like people are like this, up and down, up and up and up and up and down. Like they change all the time. So how would you give a person that authority, or like how much power do you give your friends or your peers' words? Like when they speak to you, how much are you gonna be broken down by that, or are you gonna, like, again, like we said before, put it through a filter? Right? We talked about that on a recent episode where, like, keep every thought captive. You know, whatever the person says to you, are you just believing it like that? When a person, or when you're saying it to yourself, right? We talk about people saying it to you. What about you saying it to yourself? Like, are you believing what you say to yourself? Because I remember I wrote down that, you know, when it comes into your head, those thoughts that come from shame, which is like, I don't deserve love because of what I've done, right? When you have that thought and you believe it, it's gonna keep on digging you deeper into that pit of shame. And that's why I put when you believe it, because that thought might come. It's gonna come, like,
Yeah, definitely.
Like if even if you do anything wrong, it might just any unwanted thoughts are gonna enter your head. But it's the choice is, are you gonna believe that thought or not? Right. And sometimes people can believe it because what else are they gonna believe in? They're gonna believe in the negative words that's being said to them.
Another one, and we talked about this episode 10, forgiveness. Forgive yourself. And ask for forgiveness. If you messed up, to try and get that guilt away from you, you need to apologize. You need to ask for forgiveness. If I did something to you, obviously I'm going to feel guilty, but I won't be able to let it go until I go, Lewis, I'm sorry, I messed up. Can you forgive me? And forgive yourself. That's a big one. A lot of people just don't forgive yourselves, and we talked about that with the pride. Learn from your mistakes. Take them.
Let it prompt you to change the future, to make better decisions. That's the best part of guilt.
I wrote down mistakes don't make you a bad person, right? When everybody makes mistakes, don't let it, you know,
become your identity.
Exactly. Something we're always big on is negative talk. Stop that negative. You just talked about it. Those thoughts that come into your head, don't let those take over. You know, replace it with self-compassion. And something I saw too was, what happens when a friend tells you they're going through something, they feel guilty, or they say, Lewis, I'm just so bad, I'm a bad person, I do this. The first thing, or the thing you should do, is remind me of my strengths, remind me of my values.
Remind you who you are.
Do that to yourself. Episode 6 talked about being friends with yourself. Remind yourself of your strengths and your values and your character and who you are, because a lot of times we get, like we talked about, we get lost in that black cloud and we start replacing our identity with other things that should not be there.
You start forgetting who you are.
Remind yourself who you really are. That's what I have for overcoming guilt.
And I wanted to share, like, this verse that David, Psalm 32. And it says, yes, what joy for those whose record the Lord has cleared of guilt, whose lives are lived in complete honesty. When I refused to confess my sin, my body wasted away, and I groaned all day long. Day and night your hand of discipline was heavy on me. My strength evaporated like water in the summer heat. Finally, I confessed all my sins to you and stopped trying to hide my guilt. I said to myself, I will confess my rebellion to the Lord, and you forgave me. All my guilt is gone. And I thought that was crazy. Like, David felt guilt. And he said that guilt was like taking energy out of him, just like the water on a summer day gets evaporated. Like, he was just talking about how guilt feels. But the thing is, like, he felt that, and it wasn't until he just confessed it that it left. So, when
I said, speak it out.
You gotta
write it out.
You gotta confess that stuff. It's all about not letting it linger. That lingering is what's gonna allow the shame to build up. And so when you have that guilt, you have to let it prompt you to change the future, and always remember that when you're feeling good about something, it's because it doesn't align with your values and who you are. So never forget who you are through that guilt, and never let shame rest in your heart. And that's what shame is all about.
Yeah, I love how you always end it that way. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, whether you're listening on Spotify, iTunes, or watching us on YouTube. We appreciate you, and we'll see you for the next episode. We love you. Peace out.
See you.